This is a story of one of the most prolific fruits in the world, yet many of you may never have had it, even though it is grown right here in Florida. This story tells how the Jamaican breakfast staple made its way from Tahiti to my table. Please welcome Toastmaster Roxanne Hussein.
Fellow Toastmasters, and well, we have no guests. Show of hands for me if you know what this is. Anybody? Gary Sharp and Cedric. Anybody else? So Gary and Cedric, have you had it? Have you had it? Gary has,
yes,
not
I
Cedric.
have.
Well, isn't that
Jamaica.
funny? Only one of you have, and yet it is as common as oranges and grown right here in Florida. This is breadfruit. Not only is it one of the most prolific fruits in the world, with hundreds of known varieties grown in 90 countries worldwide, it also has one of the most dramatic tales associated with it. Breadfruit originated in the Indo-Malay region, and it was spread throughout the Pacific by voyaging islanders. When the Europeans discovered it in the late 1500s, they were both amazed and delighted by it. Who had ever seen such a thing? A starchy fruit that when you roast it in a fire had both the aroma and the texture of freshly baked bread. In Jamaica, breadfruit is comfort food, and adding it to any breakfast table turns it into a feast. A Jamaican would never serve a Christmas morning breakfast without it. The story of how breadfruit made its way from Tahiti to the Caribbean is the stuff of which movies are made. No, literally, they made a movie. It was by providence, with assistance, that the breadfruit came to Jamaica. Although breadfruit did not arrive on the island until 1793, the story begins 22 years earlier. Captain Cook had sailed to Tahiti on the HMS Endeavour. He was accompanied by Sir Joseph Banks. Seeing the breadfruit as a cheap way to feed the enslaved people in the Caribbean, Sir Joseph Banks proposed to King George III that he commission a special expedition to transport the breadfruit plants from Tahiti to the Caribbean. And thus the stage was set for one of the most notorious mutinies in history, the Mutiny on the Bounty. It was Lieutenant William Bligh who was commissioned to captain the Bounty and transport the trees. On the journey to take the trees to the Caribbean, First Mate Fletcher Christian led a mutiny against Captain Bligh and set him, along with 18 of his loyalists, adrift on the ocean, leaving them for dead. But why? What was the motivation for this? The way Hollywood tells it, it's because Captain Bligh was a tyrant. He was, but is that enough? Or that the mutineers just wanted to stay in Tahiti, which ultimately they did, and their descendants still live in that region today. Still, is that enough? What act could Captain Bligh have committed that is so egregious that it would bring Fletcher Christian to hold a bayonet to his head and force him off the boat? The documented truth is this. Supplies were scarce and the ship was overcrowded, and Captain Bligh wanted to use the last of the men's drinking water to water the breadfruit saplings. That's right. He valued the life of fruit trees over the lives of men. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. The mutineers tossed hundreds of breadfruit plants overboard. Not that it mattered, since they took the bounty back to Tahiti and ultimately burnt it. The movies tell of the courage and the sailing skills of the men who were left for dead, and the courtroom drama of Captain Bligh's trial for the loss of the bounty and the men for the mutiny. But what you don't see in the movies is that 2 years later, Captain Bligh returned to Tahiti, this time with 2 ships, the HMS Providence and the HMS Assistance, to complete his mission. So you see, as I said earlier, it was by Providence with assistance that the breadfruit was successfully introduced to the Caribbean. First to St. Vincent and then to Jamaica. You may have thought I meant the providence of God and the assistance of man. I guess you can take it both ways. Nonetheless, the mission was regarded as a failure. You see, the enslaved people were unfamiliar with it and refused to eat it. Instead, they fed it to the pigs. It wasn't until decades, almost a century later, that it became the staple that it is today. Now, let's get it to the table. Breadfruit is roasted before it is eaten, traditionally in an open wood fire, but you can also do it on one of these coal stoves. This is our Jamaican version of an outdoor kitchen. The process cooking time is 1 hour to 2 hours, depending on the size of the breadfruit. The one you see here will take about 1 hour. The charred skin is removed once the fruit has cooled and the breadfruit becomes infused with a sweet, smoky flavor. It's then cut into wedges and enjoyed hot with salt and butter, or thinly sliced and fried. If you were to poll Jamaicans on how they prefer their breadfruit, roasted or fried, you'll probably get a 50-50 split. For me, I prefer mine fried. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Okay, I'll give you